Solanto asked, what do you think about CPI tomorrow? It'll be soft or hot? Very hard to say, right? To be honest, it's one thing to be forecasting the data. Okay, it's one thing to be forecasting the data, whether is it going to be very positive or very negative. Then it's also another thing to understand that a very good data doesn't necessarily mean that the price would go up. You can follow that thought process, right? I mean, if you take a look at NFP last Friday, it was a pretty solid data, but the dollar came down. Okay, just a recent case study, right? So from my observation and my experience, right, I always share with traders, because of that reason, right, I always share with traders, you don't want to just trade on the surface level of the data release, okay? A good data doesn't mean you want to buy it. A bad data doesn't mean you want to sell it. The news data itself is just one single entity that might impact and influence the market, okay? But it's not the only thing, okay? There are so many things that's ongoing concurrently. But what I see is that this data tends to give the market a reason to move. Whether is it up or down is anyone's guess, right? But it gives traders a reason, or I would say it gives the price a reason to move. So for us, again, when you understand that a good data can come down, a good data can go up, a bad data similarly can go up, can come down. The news itself doesn't tell us a very clear direction, but the news gives us the volatility, right? So when we understand this and we start to observe that, oh, that's how, that's the tendency of development, then we need an additional element to help us define the direction. Okay, and that's where I go back to technical patterns, right? The pattern helps me to define a direction. So in this case here, if I go back to just the Aussie New Zealand, this pattern gives me a focus on the direction that I want to be looking at. And then I understand, all right, the news is coming in, that might give me the volatility to be involved in this trade, but the news doesn't necessarily tell me it's going to come down. But why did I decide to focus on the downside and on the upside is because of this pattern. Okay, so you can see how that gels in nicely, right? So in terms of like CPI data, is it going to be positive? Is it going to be negative? From my perspective as a trader, it doesn't matter. Okay, why? Because a good data price can come down, right? A good data price can go up. To me, it's pointless to be debating whether the data will be good or bad. Okay, because I'm not an economist, right? It doesn't really concern me in that one particular data, right? But I'm more interested in terms of like, right, do I have an opportunity to trade it if the data is going to come out, right? So as a trader, I don't really care whether it's going to be good or bad, right? I just need to understand, all right, there's an important news coming in. Volatility is likely going to kick in. Do I have a setup that I can leverage on it? If there isn't, I'll not trade it, right? If there is something, that I'll be able to trade it. But of course, if you're looking at short-term news trade, I think in one of the sessions we kind of cover the strategy to do short-term volatility trading. Okay, I think you can kind of refer back in some of the recordings that we have over here as well. You can definitely utilize that, right? So you can, obviously today we don't have any solid examples because the market is really moving now, right? But the idea is, maybe I'll just use something like this, right? This is not good as well. I'll just use something like this. Okay, so the idea of it, right? Just to give you a glimpse, okay? Obviously you don't want to follow these levels here, but these are just example, right? Now, just before the news release, if you can see a very nice little consolidation. Okay, very obvious swing points, high and low. You can do what we call a straddle technique, okay, which means you look to buy it. If the market breaks above it, of course, you can put about 15-20 pips a stop. The target is the same 1:1, and then you can also put a sell stop, right? In the event the market breaks below, then you're going to trigger sell, and then ideally the news creates the volatility and it triggers one side of the trade, and then in a very short period of time you can hit your target fairly easily. Okay, so that's what we call news trade. Okay, that's the specific strategy that I use if I want to trade the news, right? Which I seldom trade the news, okay, because that's not my style. Good. Okay, so I hope that covers it.